Hello friends, my name is Ihor Havryshchak. This is the YouTube platform of Channel 24. And traditionally, our guest is Ramiz Yunus, political scientist from the United States of America, former head of the Azerbaijani government. Mr. Yunus, hello. Thank you for the invitation. I am glad to see you in good health. Greetings to all our esteemed audience. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. I will remind our viewers, a multi-million audience, that we have a live broadcast, so please be active, like, subscribe, comment, because this is how the algorithms of this YouTube work, and in this case, more people will be able to view and find out what is happening in this world. Mr. Yunus, of course, would like to begin our conversation with the fact that Hurricane Milton hit Florida, and this is the biggest, strongest hurricane that has hit the United States of America over the past 100 years, experts say. He caused a lot of trouble in the United States and changed the plans of the big leaders of the world, including the meeting on October 12 at the Ramstein base in Germany, where Joe Biden, Macron, Scholz, Zelenskyy and other leaders were supposed to meet, but it seems that this meeting was postponed. Yes, of course, the hurricane made its own certain adjustments. I would like you to understand how important, especially 4 weeks before the presidential campaign, before the election of the President of the United States of America, and not only the President. Many people today talk about electing only the President, while the entire composition of the lower house, 435 congressmen and 30% of the upper house of senators are being re-elected. So many of them are at stake, both at the federal level, including presidential elections, and at the state level, such as what is happening now in Florida, and before that in North and South Carolina. Before Hurricane Milton, there was the more destructive Hurricane Helen. Although they predicted that the current Hurricane Milton would be even stronger than Helen, and even tried to give it the highest category, the one that did not exist 100 years ago. But it turned out to be completely different. In America, they like to instill fear, but probably just after the first hurricane turned out to be so cruel to the civilian population, there are only 230 officially confirmed deaths. The damage caused by this hurricane is about $60 billion. And therefore, for this hurricane, which passed in a few weeks, literally to Milton, of course, the federal government, and all those territories that, first of all, Florida, they had to prepare. Therefore, the federal government, as well as at the local level, decided to evacuate 6.5 million people from the Don in order to prevent a recurrence of this. And it also turned out that this hurricane turned out to be different, did not correspond to its category, and therefore the destruction and casualties, of course, were and will eventually be lower than those of Helen. But given that Helen happened a few weeks ago, they didn't even have time to make out 5% of everything related to Helen, so it was doubly difficult to react correctly to the current Hurricane Milton. And if you look through a purely political prism, because now your question is about the political background, then President Biden cancelled his visit to Germany and Africa. Well, in Germany, as you know, Ramstein was supposed to take place on the 12th, so it is clear why the question arises, why? We have to make an excursion into recent history, literally the modern history of America. I will not go far, I will start during the time that I have been living here, yes. And I remember that this is what cost the Republicans, I mean in the days of George W. Bush, when he reacted incorrectly to the hurricane and he was on vacation, and his aides told him too late. And then all the news sites flew around, the way he flew in a helicopter or on an airplane, how he looked down on the destruction that was on the ground. That is, he was too late to get involved in this process. And the voters, of course, did not forgive the Republicans for this, and Obama came to power together with Biden, the Democrats. And after that, the same hurricane fell to the lot of Barack Obama. And then, I remember, if my memory serves me correctly, it was Hurricane Katrina, I think, that is, there were several hurricanes, yes, they had different names, but I just remember that during the term Bush era there was a hurricane, and during Biden's time, it especially coincided with the second term, when he did not fight with Mitt, but fought for this chair. And then it was Barack Obama who coped with this quite successfully. He also cancelled his trip, and he worked on this hurricane all day, and it appealed to voters who were neither Democrats nor Republicans, that's the undefined states. They say that over the past few days they have literally changed their mind and went to vote. That is why it is very important today to look at the reaction of both the Republican and Democratic parties and their main leaders through this prism. Therefore, notice how today the same Donald Trump at the rally today does not say a word about Hurricane Milton, he runs into Hurricane Helen very much. Because now Joe Biden has not flown anywhere. And they are quite seriously engaged in this today. And if they are doing this, then there is nothing to criticize them. But as for the previous hurricane, especially since it had such devastating consequences, it means that both federal governments and local governors are to blame. And the local governors are Republicans, so he blames Washington, so to speak. Of course, Washington is also to blame for this, including local governors, so everyone has their share of the blame. It's just an election campaign, it's so specific, you won't criticize your own, you'll hang all the dogs on your opponent, right? And so we need to understand how high the stakes are. It is in the foreign market today, from the point of view of foreign policy, that we have force majeure on the Russian-Ukrainian front, force majeure in the Middle East and a possible confrontation between Israel and Iran. That's all, and there are also a lot of uncertainties, and in the near future everyone is waiting for some fateful decisions so that something can be done, because nothing works out in the Middle East. The Middle East theme seems to play on the Republicans, and the Russian-Ukrainian war does not bring such dividends to the Democrats. The Republicans do not earn anything there, but the Democrats could, if they had enough determination and political will. Therefore, everyone is making big plans for Ramstein, Biden's visit and possible fateful decisions. And that is why everything seems to have already been decided inside the country, everyone has already decided. Only those in the undecided states remained. And that is why, in order to influence these voters in the undecided states, it is very important to prove yourself worthily in such a disaster. What difference does it make if it's a disaster in Florida or in some other state? This is America, and therefore, it is very important not to engage in an election campaign, but to show that we are all Americans, Republicans and Democrats, regardless of our party affiliation. We must solve this tragedy together, unite the entire nation, as, in principle, it is characteristic of all Americans. This is how they came together after the tragedy of September 11, 2001 around Bush. Then everyone united, and 90% of the support was from the President of the United States of America. So it is very important to see, and we are now, given that in 4 weeks there will literally be a presidential campaign, so I want you to understand how high the stakes are, and how important it was that Joe Biden cancelled this trip. Another thing is that it was postponed or it will not take place at all. This will show in the near future, depending on the fact that you instantly had to outplay Vance and your president. And so today it flew around the main capitals of Europe. That is, the main 4 economies in Europe, 3 in the European Union. And the United Kingdom, it is also one of the main economies in Europe, but it stands apart, it is not in the European Union. Therefore, London, Paris, Berlin and Rome are the main Europeans. And everything that is needed for Ukraine's victory is in these countries and in these capitals, made by decisions. Therefore, since we have not yet managed to meet with the Americans, I mean that they wanted to resolve many issues with the Americans together directly at Ramstein. because everyone had to be present there. They say that this seems to be postponed until the 17th 18th, but so far there is no confirmed data. We need to see how the consequences of this Hurricane Milton will be solved here, what adjustments will be made, the next, so to speak, routine of President Joe Biden. Therefore, in any case, I understand what motivates your president and why he visits these main capitals. Because, as I said a long time ago, these capitals have literally everything that Ukraine needs, only political will is missing. And as I understand it, since the emphasis is on London, then London has always stood apart from the first day of this war, starting with the same Boris Johnson, whom we can remember. And regardless of who was the Prime Minister, whether it was Rishi Sunak or the current Keir Starmer, who came after him. That is, different parties seem to have come, but the position on Ukraine on the part of the UK is very correct. That is, one of the most, so to speak, advanced. And as I understand it, they are preparing a fateful decision. And this fateful decision is associated not only with the permission to strike with long-range weapons. This is primarily due to the victory plan that President Zelenskyy has already announced here in the United States of America. And he showed this to Biden, Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump. We have not heard anything from anyone on this topic, except from all sorts of media from unnamed sources. Therefore, I do not advise you to comment on them either, because these are all paid questions and work either for the Republicans or for the Democrats. For proper analytics, it will be important if one of them said something. But, as you can see, neither Biden, nor Kamala Harris, nor Donald Trump say a word on this topic. Well, it is just logical to understand the position of Ukraine. I have not read this victory plan, but it is clear to me that it is based on the proposal that President Zelenskyy probably wants to be made to him, this offer, which he as president, as commander-in-chief and his country could not refuse. Then you can make some kind of compromise, that is, there must be some kind of proposal. Everything lies on the surface, so we all understand what kind of proposal it can be. It is, first of all, security guarantees. Those security guarantees that Ukraine does not have today. These are security guarantees, if we are talking about the legal plane. This is precisely the admission of NATO to the European Union, which is the cause of this war. That is, if the reason for this war is the unacceptability of Ukraine for Ukraine not to join NATO, then this is what Russia demands. If the West, then it is one thing that Western troops are fighting on the side of Ukraine, and Ukraine is allowed to do everything. This is one thing. This is ongoing. This is an escalation. This is, how to say, a military escalation directly on the battlefield. And if there is a political escalation, then this is the statement, the political will, and for this will, I lack not only two people, but two leaders. These are the President of the United States and the Chancellor of Germany, who since 2008 have been blocking the possible admission of both Ukraine and all others from the post-Soviet space. As you understand, so far only two people from the post-Soviet space have sought to go there. These are Ukraine and the same Georgia. Therefore, it was the United States and Germany that blocked all this. But because all this talk about what is not accepted with the occupied territories. This is also Filkin's letter, for that simple reason. It all depends on political will. Not adopted yesterday, but adopted today. Yesterday there were some laws, and today there are other laws. Is the political situation different today? Previously, it was self-evident that Russia was NATO. Today it is self-evident that Russia is NATO. No, instead of Russia today, Ukraine is NATO. This means that times are changing, the political situation. Therefore, NATO itself, they are there. Which means that political will is needed. And if there is such a political will, then, of course, it will be accepted, and after that it is possible to go to negotiations from this point of view, in terms of the fact that we accept Ukraine into NATO and the European Union together with the occupied territories, and for these occupied territories we will already negotiate with the same Russia. Already as a NATO bloc, we will first conduct political, as well as support Ukraine by military, technical and economic means. And if the political ones do not yield any results, then it will probably be necessary to make some other decisions. But I also understand that if the goal that Russia has set for itself is to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, it will be unattainable, that is, Ukraine will be accepted into NATO, then what is Russia also fighting for? Not only did it lose this war anyway, it will not win this war under any circumstances, because Ukraine remained on the map. Ukraine remained as a state. But another thing is what Russia gets in return, in addition to the fact that the occupied territory is as long as it holds them. She does not get the main thing. It does not get the fact that Ukraine will have some kind of neutral status and so on. And this requires political will, but there is none. It seems to me that in terms of President Zelenskyy's victory, I analyze it this way. I put myself in the shoes of the president of Ukraine and his team. What can he offer today that can be called a victory plan, and what can Ukrainian society accept? Because the question will arise instantly, what have we been fighting for 2.5 years, and why have we shed so much blood? There must be some kind of goal. If we have not yet physically liberated today, we have not returned it in 1991, but we must be sure that we will return it. And how can we be sure if we do not have a guarantee of safety? For example, like Israel, it is not even in NATO at all, but Israel has one country that gives security guarantees to the same Israel for all the years of its existence. Israel has had different moments and wars. How many wars have taken place there? But the United States of America has always stood behind them. To this day, Israel does not even join NATO, and in Israel, as you can see, the European Union has a rather ambiguous attitude towards Israel. Considering even over the past year, you have seen a completely ambiguous attitude in Europe to Israel and to what is happening in the Middle East. But this does not prevent Israel from staying afloat, because the United States of America is behind them, which has given them a 100% security guarantee, bipartisan at the state level, yes, and you see how this today has a very direct impact on the presidential campaign. Ukraine does not have all this. Therefore, as I understand it, the victory plan should be based on, in any case, I would put this as the first point, because this point automatically predetermines the strengthening of the military technical component of Ukraine. Look at Israel and Israel's military technical capabilities in this region today. Therefore, Israel holds on, and nothing with Israel. The missiles are released, and not a single missile even reaches its target, not to mention the fact that the United States of America itself, and destroyers, and the British there, and the French, that is, they are all helping around. That is, if all this is the same for Ukraine, and within the framework of the territory that is now fully controlled by the same Ukraine, this in the future makes it possible that Crimea, Donbass, and everything else that is today in the same Russia will no longer see as if it were its own ears, because due to what forces and capabilities, and at the expense of what resources it will be able to maintain it. Only at the expense of a nuclear war. So if Ukraine is in NATO, then this is a nuclear topic. It is not present anyway, it will disappear altogether automatically. And purely at the parity level, Ukraine will become stronger, especially if it is strengthened both economically and military technically. It's just that the main question here is whether they will agree to this. And as I understand it, if this is the basis of the victory plan, then it can be called the victory plan. If this is not the basis for this, then I do not understand what compromises Ukraine can make in this situation, because I simply do not see any other security guarantees for Ukraine in the current situation. I think that this is exactly what your president is doing today. In any case, this was, in my understanding, the plan for Ukraine's victory, which he demonstrated here on the sidelines with these American leaders. And what he is trying to convey today to European leaders as well. Because otherwise I simply do not see any compromises that can be made and agreed to like the entire Ukrainian society and all those who are fighting in the trenches today. Because if you are fighting for European integration, for joining NATO, and all your problems began with Russia and in 2008, I am not even talking further, in 2014, and to this day. It is on the basis of this political decision, and if this political decision is guaranteed to you, then the game is worth the candle. That is, her sacrifice can then be justified. That is, you are for this, you put it at the forefront, you fought for it. And if this does not happen, and you have been fighting for this for so many years since 2014, then the question arises why in 2014 you did not agree to everything that Russia offered you. Then the question arises, why did you not agree to what Russia offered you in Istanbul? That is, it offered something completely different. Neutral status, non-admission to NATO, and so on and so forth. And if you agree today and go for it, then ask why you have not agreed to this since 2014. This is exactly what we are talking about. Until 2014, why did they not agree? And since you have already done this, and you had the Euromaidan, then you put it in the constitution, and now from 2014 to the present day you have made these sacrifices, I think he should explain it. He must explain this to both Americans and Europeans, because how can he explain today to the Ukrainian people, Ukrainian society, Ukrainian soldiers, what you have been fighting for all these years? Understand? So these are very important issues that I hope your president is explaining here in the United States, and he is explaining to Europe today. By the way, they did not talk about the victory plan, which he had already managed to present to Macron, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, says that a very good conversation took place. But, Mr. Yunus, I would like to ask you, there is Hungary, there is a statement by Foreign Minister Syed, who says that Ukraine's accession to NATO will lead to World War III, yes, and not only he says this, there are several other politicians from other countries. What am I leading to? You mentioned Israel, and there is also Japan, which says that the Kuril Islands are their islands. And Japan is also not a member of NATO, but it has a strategic partnership with the United States of America. Is it possible, in your opinion, Mr. Yunus, can we count on the fact that if there are no steps in NATO, because all 32 members must approve Ukraine's accession or an invitation? Is it necessary to focus on some strategic options with the United States of America, Great Britain, because those same states, shot down missiles over Israel? France and Germany shot down missiles over Israel during the first attack. I will give you just these two options to analyze. That is, there is a NATO option and there is a non-NATO option. In both countries, the United States of America is in first place. That is, the political will of the United States, because Israel has the United States of America behind it, and South Korea, including Japan, and there are American troops everywhere. US troops are next to Israel, you see now. A huge number of them have always been there. Around Israel on this Arabian Peninsula, wherever you look, there are American military bases. That is, they don't just come there so quickly. It's just that a destroyer sails up there a few days in advance. The Americans are present there from all sides. And there are 50,000 Americans in South Korea. That is, how many years have they been there? Since the 1950s, since 1953. And there are nuclear submarines with warheads of the United States of America. And they are in the same way in Okinawa, there, in Japan. That is, in huge numbers, that is, the Americans everywhere where there is no NATO, because NATO is supposedly a North Atlantic bloc, and Israel, Japan, South Korea, they are geographically not related to North Atlantic Europe. And therefore, the United States allegedly takes it upon itself. Well, my dear, you understand perfectly well that NATO is not Hungary or Slovakia at all, right? NATO is, first of all, two armies that exist, right? These are the United States of America and Turkey. These are the two most powerful armies. Now, for example, there is talk that Poland wants to become the main army in Europe, precisely on this part, that is, it is invested in full. This is what is happening today, this is such a geopolitical force majeure. Of course, this is done in such a way that all Europeans have come to the movement, but now who will invest more in it? I am not saying that Britain and France are nuclear powers, and they have always paid due attention to this. But, again, they do not have the army, for example, Britain and France do not have the army that Turkey, for example, has. But they have nuclear weapons, they have a lot of other things that Turkey does not have. And this is enough for Britain, France, Turkey, and the United States of America, that is, they are self-sufficient in terms of the fact that they can defend themselves. That is, no one will attack them. Remember even the conflict that was between Russia and Turkey for shooting down this fighter for 6 months. There was no one on the side of Turkey. Yes, only a political statement was made, but in any case, Turkey made this decision on its own, because Turkey has these capabilities, while South Korea and Japan do not have these opportunities. Israel created these opportunities for itself thanks to the United States of America, because the basis of the state, as you remember how it was created, Stalin together with the Americans agreed, but this was the first idea of Stalin, but Ben-Gurion made the right decision and turned Israel towards Europe, after which the United States of America fully invested. And to this day, It is an outpost of the United States of America. But they have made this state a fairly powerful military technical country. That is, you see how it is militarized today in all aspects of both scientific and technical, military technical terms. That is, she is holding on in this situation. Naturally, the United States is behind them. And if NATO does not give such security guarantees, but again, NATO can easily give these security guarantees if there is a political war between the United States and Germany. That will do. And Slovakia will be built, and Hungary will be built, no one will ask this. Because the same Americans always have leverage over all these countries. It's just that the Americans do not use these pieces of influence. Even in this war, as you know, they use only 5% of the Pentagon's capabilities. Because if they wanted to, they would have resolved this situation long ago. They don't need it, they have a different tactic, a different position. Therefore, it looks exactly like this. But Europe has always been under the umbrella of the United States of America. And it's just that the Americans will want to do it or not, or they will want to do it through NATO, or they will want to do it directly, as they did with Israel, South Korea and Japan. All this will depend on the Americans and on the political will that will be here in Washington. I don't see this political will today in the Democrats, I don't see it in the Republicans. I don't see it in either Biden or Trump, and I can't confidently say that Kamala Harris is in any way different from the same Joe Biden. This will be a continuation of the same policy, so today this political will does not exist exclusively in the United States or in Europe. I don't see her. If the UK has such a political will, and the UK is a permanent Security Council, a nuclear power, it is a former empire, and the UK has huge opportunities. This will also be very significant if this UK stands behind Ukraine as it does, as the United States stands behind Israel today. Moreover, the UK is geographically close here, that is, directly. And this is also a military armada, everything is there, plus Great Britain, do not forget, these are the Anglo-Saxons, they are directly connected with the United States of America. Therefore, it is very important to understand how successful it will be, how much it will be. It is difficult to say today, so I understand that today the whole world, and first of all the Western world, is on the verge of making fateful decisions for all mankind and separately for each country with the goal of this Western world. Because if this is not done and Ukraine is not helped, then nothing will remain of this Western world. That is, there will be no European Union, there will be no NATO. And all those that are opposed to the European Union and NATO today, they will simply increase. And here, in fact, that's right, Ukraine is today, it has become an outpost between Russia and NATO, and the European Union. And if you want to use this place only as a springboard where this war will take place, you will test all sorts of advanced weapons, that is, turn it into Vietnam, then this will not last long and in any case it will lead to your defeat. But if you want to hold on to that territory, it has to become a part of you. That is, it's like in this saying, if you want to win, you have to lead. If you can't change anything in this situation, then you have to lead. And how to lead? This means that you must directly and somehow legally influence this situation. To legally influence, you have to stop this talk about not letting loose and not letting Russia win, but that's not the case. If you are talking about a victory, you have to decipher that victory, and there can only be a victory if it is part of this system, because I don't see any other options. Now I look at this whole situation from the outside, and it is easier for me to do it, because I am not Ukrainian, I am not Russian, I am a friend of Ukraine, I live in America, an ethnic Azerbaijani and a citizen of Azerbaijan. Both Azerbaijan and the United States of America have excellent relations with Ukraine. And as a friend of Ukraine, I look at this situation. What option do I see here? I don't see any other options than a guarantee of safety. Without a security guarantee, there are no prospects, no negotiations, no statehood, no preservation of the sovereignty of the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Look at my native Azerbaijan. Today we have these security guarantees that we have, these security guarantees. If we had not had the Shusha Declaration, do you think many people would be reckoning with Azerbaijan today? If we did not have a strategic partnership with a nuclear Pakistan, would many people reckon with us today? If we did not have such a strategic partnership with one of the most important military technical countries as Israel, Azerbaijan would have all these opportunities today. But all this together strengthened what Azerbaijan had from within. These are all the moments that you are missing. You do not have the consolidation of society. We have it. We have been preparing for this. You have not dealt with these since 2014. You have not dealt with this since 2008. But this is a question for historians. After the war, you will deal with all the traitors over these 30 years. Because everything that has just come to this is the result of this wrong policy of 30 years. But this is not today's conversation. I am not a supporter of these conversations. We also had this 30 years ago in Azerbaijan. But we have drawn these conclusions. We have come this way. But we have walked this path correctly. Both in military technical terms and in political terms, it is very important. Because in political terms, look for allies correctly. And we have found these right allies. And when the political situation worked, we went forward. But we did not sign any documents. And our territories were occupied. Karabakh was occupied. 7 districts, like you have Crimea and Donbass, occupied. But when we had already received what we needed, and this X hour came, we immediately went on the attack, because we already had everything, both the army and security guarantees. And when I am reminding you of the security guarantee for a reason. We did not have the Shusha Declaration yet, but when the Second Karabakh War began, 4 F-16 aircraft landed at a military airfield near Karabakh. And the President of Turkey went on the air and said that this is my message. He did not name the United States, France, Russia, or Iran. He did not name anyone. But he says that this is my message to all those who will try to intervene in the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I will not forgive anyone, even if it is my father's son. Roughly speaking, to his own brother. He said it in Turkish. And then there was no Shusha Declaration, and after this war. Shusha Declaration. You need the Shusha Declaration with some country. I always tell you, find your Turkey. It can be the United States. It can also be the United Kingdom. Therefore, it may still be something. President Zelenskyy, as I understand it, is doing this today. In any case, I want to hope that this is what he is doing. Because this is the most important question. Without solutions to this issue, this war cannot be won. Mr. Yunus, one more question about Ramstein. It was postponed. The advisor to the head of the president's office says that it was definitely not cancelled, but postponed. At least ask you, defense ministers of countries that help Ukraine, and this time heads of state, were always supposed to fly to this 25th anniversary summit in Ramstein. And some say that there will be some serious decisions. Others say that Biden just wants to say goodbye to Europe in his last weeks there, roughly speaking, of his presidency, and this is his last visit. Do you think this is still a farewell or, of course, to announce that the United States of America will continue to support Ukraine, as always? Or are they still preparing for some serious decisions that should also affect the election campaign, show that the Democrats are decisive, so they have clearly set the goal? Well, you know, what you have just voiced, and many experts are voicing, suggests itself. Since the heads of state are gathering, it means that Biden is coming, and Biden will no longer be president in a month. Well, since January 20th, but it's just his, so to speak, farewell tour. And sir, of course, he would like to say goodbye to all the heads of state, especially since I remember how he spoke recently at the session of the United Nations General Assembly. This was also his programmatic farewell speech. And this, of course, takes place. The second part of what you're saying is more like wishful thinking. We want it to be so. And I, too, maybe would like it to be the case that he will come and make some fateful decision, one that he has not made for 2.5 years. So he did not make these decisions in all the years of his political career. Here he is with more than 50 years in big politics. Name me one decision by Joe Biden that radically changed the world. For example, if we are talking about Margaret Thatcher, I can say that she did what concerned the Falkland Islands, which are off the coast of Argentina, and where these islands are, where the UK is, she made this decision. And so many years have passed, and everyone understands that this is a strong-willed decision, it was political will. She is a charismatic politician, she made this decision. Furthermore, that is, he and Reagan together made a decision about the Soviet Union, the war in Afghanistan. But Biden has not made such decisions in all the years of his life. He is already over 80. And it will disappear from the political arena not today, tomorrow altogether. I think they will write some kind of memoirs and make some money. Yes, as they all do from morning to evening, whether they are former presidents or former first ladies. In America, it's a business. Here, money is all around commanding the parade. Therefore, why should he take the risk? I understand that he is 80 years old, and to say that today he is at the level of these politicians who were during World War II, be it Churchill, Roosevelt, Harry Truman, that is, those people who can take and make this decision. For example, the same Trump, he is a man of action. Well, what other business, what action? That is, why does no one know exactly what he can do today? Because he is a non-systemic person, far from such a standard, classic policy that we are used to seeing. Therefore, America, you see, has been polarized, it has split. And the whole world split, by and large. And everyone, even those who do not like the same Biden today, say that it is better for Russian democracy to remain. At least something can be predicted there. And this one will come. Maybe something will be wrong. First of all, I am talking about the Chinese. That's why Biden is a predictable politician. That's why he chose Kamala Harris as his vice president. That's why he became the vice president of the same Barack Obama. That is, these are people who take a step forward, 2 steps back. Before drinking a glass, they blow on it 10 times. They are very cautious, they never take such abrupt movements, and they do not like to escalate the situation. Nowhere. Therefore, it is easier for them to engage in a reset, despite the fact that they framed Mikhail Saakashvili and the entire Georgian people, because the people of Georgia believed that democracy is a wonderful system of state governance, and you are a forbost, and you will defend it everywhere. But you are not defending it. In the post-Soviet space, you do not defend this. Nowhere. I have not seen it in any country yet, because it started with my native Azerbaijan. Betrayed. After Azerbaijan, you betrayed Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili. After Mikhail Saakashvili, you betrayed Ukraine in 2014. And you betray these 2.5 years. And Biden, one of those who had a direct hand in this, as a senator, he never spoke. With some legislative initiatives, which we can recall today, he was not like John McCain, for example. We all remember John McCain, but Biden was not heard then. That's why he became vice president, and that's why the first decision they made in 2008, coming to power in 2009 with Barack, was a reset. And Hillary Clinton stood next to them. That is, we saw it all. And Hillary Clinton is Bill Clinton's wife. And Bill Clinton is to blame for everything that happened during the same Yeltsin. It's Bill Clinton's fault that you don't have nuclear weapons. Bill Clinton is the man who committed the crime with the Budapest Memorial, who deprived you of it. Bill Clinton, again, is the Democratic Party. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. Reagan is a Republican, but, unfortunately, Trump is not Reagan, categorically not Reagan. Joe McCain was closer to Reagan. And Trump is not a Republican or a Democrat at all. He doesn't care about all the values that the same Republicans propagate for the most part. And power is important to him. He wants to come to power, and he is breaking America in a classic way, that is, its role as a leader in the world, and he is breaking political institutions like NATO, such as the European Union, the leading role of America. And in general, as a preposition to the democracy you are talking about. And today democracy has become a dirty word everywhere. And in my native Azerbaijan, she has become. And in Georgia she is a dirty word, and in Armenia, and in the Caucasus, she is so masterful, no matter what they say. You don't see what is happening in Georgia today, do you? Will anyone say that there will be elections today? You saw that Georgia is now the most pro-Western Caucasian country, if you take it this way. And look, they are today, and pro-Russian Armenia, which will never be either in the European Union or in NATO, with Russian bases, with all the affairs, now Tom and Jerry, cat and mouse, are playing in the same Armenia. Having not resolved the issue with Russia on the Russian-Ukrainian front, they will give the same Armenia under the slaughter today. But Azerbaijan, thank God, has already become wiser. It does not play these games. He keeps his distance. I just see the situation in Georgia. I see how they are going to undermine the situation in Armenia. They give it away at the slaughter, between Russia, it turns out, and between the same West. And between Russia and the West. Azerbaijan was 30 years ago, we lost Karabakh and 7 districts, and we were made against us in the 97th paragraph. Georgia lost Abkhazia, the Skambali region, and now they also want to give Armenia to the slaughter, and Ukraine has not been in this situation since 2014, including today, and has not given these security guarantees to this day. Therefore, all this, of course, is the result of the activities of all these politicians, and Biden is one of these Easter cake politicians. And to expect that at the end of his political career, he suddenly woke up as a completely different person. I would like to believe in it, but I have not considered science fiction since childhood. Mr. Yunus, the heads of state of the CIS met, and there was also a meeting of the president of Azerbaijan separately with the head of Russia and also separately with the chairman minister of Armenia Pashinyan. What I have just read that in the near future there will be no trilateral contact group in the composition of the three. What do you need to know about this meeting now? So, yes, you correctly noted that the trilateral meeting between the presidents of Russia and Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of the army did not take place. This is very remarkable, and this trilateral meeting is not wanted either in Baku or in Yerevan. Moscow really wants this, and if Armenia is now gravitating towards the Western platform, Azerbaijan, on the contrary, is not gravitating towards either the Western platform or the Russian platform, because Azerbaijan, on the contrary, proposes to negotiate directly with Armenia, without intermediaries, because we have been dealing with this mediator for 30 years, within the framework of the OSCE ministerial group. Russia, France and the United States of America were there, and this conflict was never resolved. Now that we have resolved this conflict on the ground, the topic is closed. Well, let's come to an agreement politically. The two leaders and their teams will solve all our issues that we have put on the agenda. There were 18 questions. One issue related to the Zangezur corridor, at the suggestion of Azerbaijan and at the request of the same Armenia, Azerbaijan made a gesture, singled out in a separate case. If there is a peace treaty, then this is a separate case. This topic will be automatically resolved, no doubt. Well, just so as not to associate it with these issues. And they seem to have agreed on 13 points. And now the question arises, what are the cases? That is, no one deciphers all these questions. Armenia says that we have agreed on 80%, 20% remains. But these 20% are 4 points, and there is no agreement on them. And therefore, I have regularly told you, and I can repeat again, that the main thing is that Armenia does not change the constitution. And in the Declaration of Independence of Armenia, the preamble of this declaration, it is clearly written that Karabakh is the territory of Armenia. 30 years ago, they did, and then they signed the Almaty Declaration with this. And in the Almaty Declaration, when they signed with amendments that they recognize the territorial relationship with Azerbaijan, but Karabakh has nothing to do with Azerbaijan. I am asking all Ukrainian journalists this question, dear Igor, I will ask you this question again. If you are the president of Ukraine, and you are offered, the war is over, you sign a peace treaty with Russia, and the Russian constitution says, Crimea and Donbass, and then they added Zaporizhzhia and the Kherson region, the territory of Russia. Will you sign a peace treaty with Russia or not? Well, obviously not. Why is there a peace treaty? There are 4 islands of the Kuril chain, which has no population, nothing, by and large, to say that they are so important. Well, Japan to this day does not have a peace treaty with the Soviet Union, and today with Russia, because this territory of Japan, it was occupied after World War II. Therefore, this must be understood if this is not the case today, and they are proposing to do this, because the Americans, and, first of all, the current administration, are putting pressure on this. And, of course, the French would like this, but Azerbaijan will not agree to it. And the second agreement, which, I know, Armenia does not agree to. Azerbaijan proposes Armenia to apply to the OSCE so that the OSCE Minsk Group. We are rejecting the OSCE Minsk Group, its existence, because it has already fulfilled its mission, it has already gone into history, because the Karabakh conflict is over, the war is over. We are now signing a peace treaty. Thank you very much for everything you have done. But this should be addressed by both sides, yes, to the OSCE Minsk Group. Armenia refuses to do this. So, pay attention, dear Igor, or dear viewers, I do not get tired of telling you this, because you must see it through the recognition that you have to do this. Because if the constitution does not change, they have lost on the ground. They always think, yes, we lost on the ground. But we have the constitution, it gives us the opportunity in the future, in 50 years. How do you know what will happen in 50 years, right? After 50 years, again, there may be some kind of force majeure. The Soviet Union collapsed. Now, you see, 30 years have passed, some kind of force majeure. Tomorrow, in 50 years, there may still be something. Let's leave this in the constitution. And tomorrow we will raise it and find support at all institutions in America and Europe. And the constitution can change somehow. And we will say that this is our constitution, this is our territory. It's just that today the realities are such that Azerbaijan is in charge of the parade on the ground. But we will not give up on you in any way. That is, they want to leave a political loophole. Azerbaijan wants to close this political loophole with reinforced concrete. How he closed the military loophole. That is, on the ground we decided. Now we need to decide politically. Because without resolving this politically, Azerbaijan will not sign any peace treaty. Any first-year law student will go to protest in any constitutional court of Armenia if the constitution of Armenia today is subordinate to Pashinyan. For the sake of ticking, they can make some kind of decision that the Azerbaijani Constitutional Court of Armenia recently decided that this declaration has no legal significance, no legal significance. Cancel by the majority, get together, cancel, and why don't they cancel it? And tomorrow a different leader will come out, there will be a new constitutional court, and they will say that the previous ones were wrong. Why should Azerbaijan depend on the political situation in Armenia? We need an international document that will confirm, once and for all, the topic of Karabakh is closed. This is the territory of Azerbaijan, and it is no longer discussed. That's how it should be. Understand? Therefore, if this is not done, there will be no peace treaty. That's why they are putting pressure on Azerbaijan. And I'm not even talking about the fact that the lawsuits are international courts, the decision of the European Parliament. And the other day, the US Congress, mind you, again, the Democrats, are a master of their own. And there are no Republicans there. 53 congressmen and 10 senators, and all those who are going to be elected in California, and in many other places where Armenians live. They all appealed to Blinken, wrote a letter to Blinken, to apply sanctions against Azerbaijan. I have no doubt that this letter was written under the dictation of Blinken's own apparatus. This is in order to put pressure on Azerbaijan, so that Azerbaijan, because elections are in a month, and an international climate forum will be held in Azerbaijan on November 10 to 23. And there will be 200 countries at this climate forum. The whole world will gather there. And the Americans must come too. And they want to put pressure on Azerbaijan, that since we allowed you to hold this conference, then you will also make a concession, play along with us and sign some paper with Armenia, so that we can selectively show here that we are at least in the foreign market. We are not succeeding in the Middle East, we are not succeeding on the Russian-Ukrainian front, we have at least achieved something in the South Caucasus, until peace after many years of conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan says, why will I play along with you, especially since you do not do what we need and do not put pressure on Armenia. And Armenia is afraid that Biden will leave tomorrow and Donald Trump may come, and Donald Trump does not care about both Armenia and Azerbaijan. Let me remind you that the Second Karabakh War began under Donald Trump. He is not interested in this territory, because he knows everything. California votes for the Democrats. And since they vote for the Democrats, he tells me to the Armenians of California, Biden dealt with it, the Democrats are dealing with your problem, so let them deal with it. I will not deal with your problem, because you do not vote for me. Both Pashinyan and the supporters of the Armenian contest are here in Washington. They understand this very well, and Azerbaijan is also well aware of this. And why should we rush somewhere? We are not going to play along with Washington, Brussels, Paris, much less Russia or Tehran. We have already resolved our issue. We have our own allies. And the list of these allies does not include the United States, France, Iran and Russia. That is, none of the Minsk groups of Karabakh issues. Because all these countries have performed and are still not happy about Azerbaijan's victory. The president of Azerbaijan said it openly the other day. A friend of Azerbaijan can only be a person, a country, and a politician who rejoices at Azerbaijan's victory. I tell you the same thing from morning to evening on all your channels. Tomorrow you invite someone to the studio, ask who's Crimea, if someone is from Russia, or someone from some politicians. And the first thing you ask Russians, whom you invite in huge numbers. Let them openly say that to this day not everyone can pronounce it articulately. The same applies to Karabakh. In the same way, I always ask you all regularly. I don't even go out in the studio. That's why I regularly go on the air of your channel. Because I know you have an editorial policy, and you know about my position. I will not go to the channel and communicate with those journalists who allow doubts about the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and the belonging of Karabakh to Azerbaijan. Or they invite some crooks to the studio who question it. And why should I do this? If you want me to defend your sovereignty, your territorial integrity and say that Crimea is Ukraine, Donbass is Ukraine, Zaporizhia is Ukraine, Kherson is Ukraine, then you will be kind enough to do it. Therefore, I go to those channels and set specific conditions. And if one of the journalists, I will not name them, but one is quite famous recently, but I smeared him on the wall. And today he is declared an enemy of Azerbaijan in Azerbaijan. For that simple reason, no one, neither the president of Ukraine nor an ordinary journalist, is allowed to question the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. Does the president of Azerbaijan question the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine? No, any Azerbaijani does not do this. Well, I mean an official person. He doesn't do it either. And all those who go on the air today, you can name me one Azerbaijani who goes on the air in Ukrainian channels. Here are my friends coming out. And Egil Rustam comes out of this one, and Eldar Namazev goes there. Does any of them say that there is no doubt that Donbass or Crimea or Zaporizhia or Kherson is not the territory of Ukraine? No one. Because this is the position of the entire Azerbaijani society. We defend international law. We are not defending President Zelenskyy, Poroshenko, Yushchenko or anyone else. We defend international law. I don't like Maya Sandu either, for her toothless policy. But Transnistria is Moldova. This is not up for discussion. I don't like the fact that Saakashvili is in prison. And I do not really welcome the policy of the current government in Georgia. But Abkhazia is the territory of Georgia. This is not up for discussion. So be kind, and you do it too. That is, this applies not only to you, Ukrainians, but also to the whole world, including the Americans. And on what basis do these congressmen and senators write this type of letter? What are the sanctions against Azerbaijan? What has Azerbaijan done? It liberated its territory, restored sovereignty and territorial integrity, and restored 4 Security Council resolutions, for which you voted. So you vote one thing, and in your heart you think another. In the same way as you say about Ukraine, you want Ukraine's victory, and you want Ukraine's victory, so accept it into NATO, or give it security guarantees. Why the hell don't you do that? Are you deceiving them? You and Azerbaijan have been deceiving like this for 30 years, but now we have become wiser. Will you be able to deceive us? And we know that there are politicians and leaders in America who think right. And a lot of them are in the Pentagon, they are in the Department of Energy, they are in intelligence, they are in the establishment. So we are working with them, and we will continue to work with them, because America is ambiguous. It does not consist only of the Armenian caucus, which lobbies the interests of Armenians in California. America is very big, so all this must be understood. I live in this country, and it is with this understanding that I am going on your broadcasts, and I also advise you that you must somehow understand it correctly. Your eyes have also been opened much today. And now you see, we have a lot of similarities. It's just that when someone tells me, Russia is confronting you, and Russia is not confronting us, how can it not oppose us? And 30 years ago, who helped Armenia occupy our territory? 20% of our territory. Russia, yes, 366 regiment. At that time, no one had an army at all, and there were no soldiers, there were no weapons. Well, Russia chose Armenia. Why? Because there was an Elchibey government in Azerbaijan. I worked in this government in a leadership position. We have declared an anti-Russian policy, an anti-Iranian policy, a pro-Western one. This is what you have begun to do now. We started doing it before you, you know. We began to do this before Georgia. For this, we were beaten in the brain. And the Americans, instead of protecting us, passed the 907th Amendment against us in 1992. Congress. These are all these scoundrels. Menendez, and everyone else is like him. Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and Menendez will not go to prison again today, not tomorrow. It is for bribes and so on. That is, we saw it all. But today, does anyone remember them that they did not rejoice for 30 years? They did everything against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. Okay, that's history. And what are you doing today? Why don't you rejoice at our victory? Are we doing something wrong that Ukraine is doing? We do all the same. You support Ukraine in words, but in reality you also do not support it. It's just that Ukraine's problem is that Ukraine has not drawn conclusions for these 30 years, and we have drawn these conclusions. And we found the right allies, and we prepared. And that's why we got this result. Therefore, look for your Turkey, look at Azerbaijan, study our experience. Believe me, I sincerely wish you victory and success. And when I answered your question about security guarantees at the very beginning, as I understand it, this is a very difficult situation today, and in this situation, political will is needed here in Washington and some leaders of Europe. If that political will isn't there, well, you have to stand firm, because if you blink, they'll put you in jail right away. You see, from morning to evening they hint at all kinds of opportunities to prepare public opinion, to reach some compromises. I don't think President Zelenskyy doesn't understand this, and he will sign his own death warrant. Look at Azerbaijan and draw conclusions. You will need consolidation. If they see that you have consolidation in your society, such as Azerbaijani society, no Congress, no Security Council, no European Parliament will be able to do anything. And do you think that just like that, the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen comes to us, the Chinese leader signs a strategic partnership with the Azerbaijani leader, Putin comes to Baku, the Iranian president will appear there not today, but tomorrow. I said before, there were none, and I am saying it today. Why? Because the status code has changed. Everything is decided by what happens on Earth. And plus, look at what is happening in the world, and what is the importance of the South Caucasus. And the leader of the South Caucasus of these three countries, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Armenia, is Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a strategic partner with Georgia, and this is exactly the neck that allows China and Central Asia to pass through the South Caucasus and reach Europe. And Azerbaijan is the most key country here. And do you think that just like that, the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen comes to us, the Chinese leader signs a strategic partnership with the Azerbaijani leader, Putin comes to Baku, the Iranian president will appear there not today, but tomorrow. This is the importance of this country. And then some pro-Armenian congressman writes some kind of paper. This piece of paper will be in the same place as many pieces of paper that the French Parliament or the European Parliament came up with. They will not make any difference. These are ordinary papers, just like the UN Declaration, because everything is decided by the Security Council, so the Security Council does not decide anything, so no one can decide anything in the UN. You see, the force of law is gone. Now the law of force is working. You need this strength, because you need to show strength to strength. We showed it, so we will be reckoned with. Show it, find it, it exists, it must be inside your society, and it is nearby. Find your Turkey as well. I have no doubt that your president is doing just that. In any case, I really hope that this is what he should be doing. He has no other task today. Because to win on Earth, you need to have all this. Because military technical support, political support, economic support, what has been stated, yes, these 4 points, they need to be deciphered. Political support is a guarantee of security. Difficult, but confident and correct steps of my country. I am sure that everything will be exactly as you say. Mr. Yunus, thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you that, as always, everything is accentuated, everything is correct, everything is nuanced. You explained about geopolitical processes, as in the United States, as in Russia's war against Ukraine, and in the Middle Caucasus. Thank you very much. Thank you. Goodbye. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. I ask you to like the video, subscribe, comment. See you on Channel 24.